Intellectual movements in Iran involve the Iranian experience of modernity and its associated art, science, literature, poetry, and political structures that have been changing since the 19th century. History of Iranian modernity. Long before the European Renaissance generated the radical ideas that eventually reshaped Europe and the United States, Persian statesmen, artists, and intellectuals had formulated ideas that strikingly anticipate those of modernity. Since more than 1,000 years ago there has been a conflict in Persia between the search for modernity and the forces of religious obscurantism. Some 2,500 years ago, when Herodotus was writing his histories, Persia was the West's ultimate other. It has been a common belief of scholars that modernity began in the Westerners by its philosophical nature, economic underpinning, and cultural exigencies a uniquely Western phenomenon. All other cultures, those who have lived on the darker side of Renaissance, must emulate the Western experience, if they want to be modern. From Max Weber to Milan Kundera, many Western scholars and writers have argued that everything from representative democracy and rational thought to the art of the novel and the essay are not only Western in origin but also uniquely suited to its culture, and native to its temperature climes. Persia, with its impressively rich and varied cultural legacy, had a formative role in shaping Western consciousness. The Bible is replete with profuse praise for Persia and its kings. The Bible's praise for Cyrus the Great was partially in recognition of his role in freeing the Jews from their Babylonian captivity. Of equal importance was the fact that the vast Persian Empire of the time was a paragon of religious and cultural tolerance. Hegel, whose writings are considered by many as the apex of the Western philosophical tradition, uses superlatives in praising the role of Persia and Zarathustra in history. Following Hegel in 19th-century Germany, Nietzsche wrote his magnum opus, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, that similarly touched upon this key figure of the Persian imagination. Nietzsche's book offers a radical critique, almost a total debunking, of the whole Western tradition of philosophy. It is no mere accident that Nietzsche chose to articulate his critical views in the name of Zarathustra. The end of the 19th century was not the only or the last time Zarathustra played a prominent role in shaping Western consciousness and philosophic discourse. In 1990s, Persian influences on the millennial fever, and on other New Age themes, were so strong that Harold Bloom, the eminent American critic, suggested that the last decade of the 20th century should in truth be called a return to Zoroastrian origins. Western art, no less than history and theology, bear testimony to the ubiquity of the Persian presence in antiquity. Of all the extant works of Greek tragedy, for example, the only one that is about a non-Greek subject is Aeschylus, a play the Persians. Generations of Iranian intellectuals. First generation, the 19th-century Persian reformers who are considered as the first generation of Iranian intellectuals were perfectly conscious of the fact that it was not enough to rely upon the antiquity of Persian civilization to think about its continued ability to survive. They tried to establish a relationship with men of power that would have permitted them to dictate their blueprints for reforms. These blueprints naturally remained without immediate impact among the men of power to whom they were addressed. These intellectual reforms encountered a widespread opposition from the court and the ulama. Abd al-Rahim Taliboff, Fath Ali Akhundzada, and Sani Odol belong to this generation. Second generation. The second generation intended to introduce modern civilization to Persia, not only by imitating the West, but through a coherent and systematic approach to European culture. Muhammad Taqi Bahar, Ali Dashti, Ali Akbar Dava, Muhammad Ali Farai, Sadiq Hedayat, Bozorg Alavi, Ahmad Khazravi, Saeed Nafisi, Hasan Taqi Abdul Hossein Timurtash and Abdul Bahar belong to this generation. Third generation. The third generation of Iranian intellectuals signify the absorption of Russian Marxism into Iranian political and social thought. With the popularity of Marxist ideology among the third generation of Iranian intellectuals, the new culture for translation and knowledge of modernity was drawn inevitably toward moral and political absolutes. Intellectuals claimed to be givers of lessons, and acted as moral legislators, who were critics of both the state and the society. Jalal Ali Ahmad and Ali Shariata belonged to this generation. Fourth generation of Iranian intellectuals are mainly characterized by the journals such as Ghaffari and Kian, in contrast with the ideological generation of Iranian intellectuals who in their encounter with the Western modernity favored a monistic attitude, exemplified by Marxist and Heideggerian philosophies. The fourth generation of Iranian intellectuals decided on a move away and a critical distanciation from master ideologies. The methodological position of the new generation of Iranian intellectuals is characterized by two main philosophical attitudes: the extension of an anti-utopian thinking on an intersubjective basis on the one hand, and the urge for a non-imitative dialogical exchange with the modern values of the West on the other. Javad Tabatabai and Abdolkarim Soroush, among many others, belong to the fourth generation. Modern art movement. Iranian experience in development of modernity led to a unique style of cinemas, painting and music. Iranian New Wave, a movement in Iranian cinema, has found worldwide reputation due to its deeply philosophical, poetic and artistic style. Abbas Kiarostami is the most notable figure in the new wave of Iranian cinema. In the artistic and aesthetic realm, features of new wave of Persian cinema, for example the works of Abbas Kiarostami, can be classified as postmodern. In his book Close Up, Iranian Cinema, Past, Present, Future, Hamid Dabashi describes modern Iranian cinema and the phenomenon of Iranian national cinema as a form of cultural modernity. According to Dabashi, the visual possibility of seeing the historical person on screen is arguably the single most important event allowing Iranians access to modernity. Mehdi Saidi is an internationally renowned artist and designer. His aesthetics have become a mainstay of design in many regions, especially in those using the Arabic script as their alphabet. And on November he won Grand Prize for the 5-star designers at International Invitational Poster Triennial in Osaka, Japan. On 13 December 2006, graphic designer Reza Abedini received the Principal Award in the Prince Claus Awards for his way of applying the knowledge and accomplishments of Iran's artistic heritage, renewing them, and making them exciting again. Reza Abedini's Persian sim style unites the rich calligraphic tradition of Persian culture with modernity. It is believed that Ibrahim Golestan, Feridun Rahnama and Farrokh Ghaffari founded Iran's different cinematic style and Iranian intellectual movement in the 20th century. Marcos Gregorian and Hossein Zendirudi were pioneers of Iranian modern painting and sculpture, modern and contemporary architecture movement. Although the new era in Iranian architecture began with the rise of Safavid dynasty, in fact, it is in the early decades of the 20th century that the first generation of modern Iranian architects, almost like every generation of modern architects in the world, appears as being influenced by the modern movement and rationalism in architecture. Architects such as Vatin Hovhannisyan, Ali Sadegh, Mohsen Farai, Paul Akbar, Gabriel Gevrikian, Haydar Girai, Abdulaziz Farman Farmayon and Hushang Sehoun are examples of this movement. Later, in the mid-1960s, Ali Sadarov Kami, Kamran Dibbar and Nader Adalan are among those Iranian architects who have opened their design approach to the history and traditions to represent a trend of Iranian postmodernism. Attention for the new trends in international architecture is being carried out by Iranian architects, even after the Islamic Revolution. Like most architectural milieu of the world, in the 1980s, the experiments on the transition from postmodernism to new developments has influenced many Iranian architects. In architects such as Reza Danshmir, Fahad Ahmadi, and Arab Dibba. In this context, it is of interest the attempt by some architects like Abaskari Bahram Sherdal to go in deep within the most advanced theory and trends in contemporary and post-contemporary architecture, such as the theory of complex systems in architecture in the case of Gharib and folding theory in the case of Sherdal. These experiments are valid methods and contribution to liberate architecture and design from abstraction, flatness, stiffness, forced rectangular and heterotopia of the modernist spaces for a more fluid, flexible, soft and dynamic architecture, open to the complexities of its environment and context. Music movement. Simultaneous with the constitutional revolution in Iran, young musicians sought new forms of music to synchronize with the tide of social changes. In 1937, Tehran's symphonic orchestra started working and performing Western as well as Iranian music. The 1979 revolution launched a renaissance in Persian classical music. The emergence of three ensembles, the Aref ensemble, the Shader ensemble, and the Masters of Persian music revolutionized Iranian music during the late 20th century and at the turn of the millennium. New figures emerged in Persian symphonic music, and several symphony orchestras started their work despite a lack of support from national governments or international bodies. The new wave can be characterized by growing interest in using both Iranian and European instruments and musical genres. Perhaps the best examples are the Melil Orchestra and the National Iranian Symphony Orchestra. Folk music also enjoyed the emergence of figures such as Sima Bina and Kamkar. These musicians introduced Iranian folk music to the international community by organizing numerous concerts worldwide. Modern poetry. Modern Persian poetry came into existence after Nima Yushij. Some notable figures include Nima Yushij, Ahmad Shamlau, Mehdi Akarvan Sales, Feridun Moshiri, Sohrab Seperi, Manocher Artashi, Muhammad Reza Shafii Kadkani, Farah Farrokhzad, Simon Babahani, Bijan Jalali, Muhammad Zohari, Mina Asadi, Muhammad Ali Sepenlu. Modern literary movement. Literary criticism and comparative literature in Iran entered a new phase in the 19th century. Persian literature enjoyed the emergence of influential figures as Sadiq Hedayat, Ahmad Khazravi, Abdul Hossein Zarinkaub, Shirok Meskab, Ibrahim Golstan and Sadig Chubik. Modern scientific movement. The history of modern science in Iran dates back to the year 1851 and the establishment of Darul-Funun, which was founded as a result of the efforts of Mirza Taghi Khan Amir Kabir, aiming at training and teaching Iranian experts on many fields of sciences. And it was the future-minded Abbas Mirza who first dispatched students to Europe to obtain a Western education. By the establishment of Tehran University, science in Iran entered a new phase. Mahmud Hessabi, Ali Asghar Hekmat, Muslim Bahadouri and many others played roles in initiating and forming these movements. The outcome of the movement has been the emergence of researchers who have been trained and received doctorate degrees in the country and have found international reputations. Modernization of Iranian medicine did not occur through the straightforward replacement of traditional Persian medicine by modern European medicine. Rather, the integration of modern medicine went through a long process that included both the reinterpretation of traditional theories by traditional physicians and the assimilation of modern theories through the prism of traditional medicine. One of the main Iranian scientific movements in the late 20th century was in the field of chemistry and pharmaceutical chemistry. The main leaders of this movement were Abbas Shafii, Bizian Fazemi, Muhammad Nabi Sabaluki, Issa Yavari and Ahmad Reza Deepa. The movement resulted in hundreds of research papers in peer-reviewed international journals. Other notable figures who promoted world-class research in Iran during the 20th century are Reza Mansouri and Yusuf Sobhuti, Abul Hasan Farhudi, Muhammad Reza Zarindist, Faridoun Davachi, Tahir Movasagian, Ardshir Ghavamzada, Ali Radmer, Hossein Najmabadi, Hormoz Shams, Muslim Bahadouri, Hormoz Dabir Ashrafid, Hossein Esteki, Gr. Baradaran Khosrow Shahi, Karo Lucas, Jawad Salara and Ali Kaveh. Iran's university population has swelled from 100,000 in 1979 to 2 million in 2006. Indeed, in Iran some 70% of science and engineering students are women. Iran is now a world leader in some areas like string theory. When a reporter for Nature asked Reza Mansouri, "Why do I see so many string theory papers coming out of Iran?" he explained how Iranian scientists worked together under revolution, sanctions and war to bring Iran to such a position. "I remember exactly the beginning of the revolution. Some old colleagues just sat together and spoke about what we could do for Iran. Is it understood that we have to look for excellence in some areas, that we may be strong and that we may get strong at that, so that will be the field of physics. So we began with that. It happens that the most active field physicists in our country were working on the string theory at that time, so they tried to be of a school, so to speak. And we did know that that was the only way which was somehow independent of all these political fluctuations regarding war, regarding cultural revolution, all that, and we really tried hard to build up schools. So we have it now, string schools, so to say somehow." In 2007, United Nations awarded Hossein Malik Afzali with the prestigious UN Population Award. Malik Afzali has helped design strategies to improve health procedures, particularly adolescent health, reproductive health and family planning. In the field of reproductive health, he has engaged policymakers and religious leaders in the planning and implementation of reproductive health programs in Iran. Iranian women's movement. Currently, women's rights groups are among the most active social rights groups in Iran and are mostly involved in an effort to gain equal rights for women in the Iranian legal system by opposing specific discriminatory laws. However, under the presidential regime of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, elected president in 2005, women's rights advocates have been beaten, jailed and persecuted. The presence of women in Iranian intellectual movements has been remarkable throughout the history of modern Iran. According to the Research Ministry of Iran, women accounted for 56% of all university students in the natural sciences, including 1 in 5 PhD students. Such education and social trends are increasingly viewed with alarm by the Iranian government. In cinema and the visual arts, Shirin Neshat, Tamaneh Milani, Rakshan Bani Etamade, and Samira Makmalbath created new cinematic styles which have attracted many from all over the world and in international festivals. Persian poet and literary figure Simon Babahani was nominated for 1997 Nobel Prize for Literature. The 2003 Nobel Peace Prize went to Shirin Ebadi for her efforts for democracy and human rights, especially for the rights of women and children. Simin Danshvaz Savushun is a novel about the Iranian experience of modernity during the 20th century. Iranian writer and satirist, Bibi cartoonist Ebadi was perhaps the first professional female satirist, critic and one of the notable figures involved in Persian constitutional revolution. In the early 20th century, Persian music enjoyed the emergence of Kamar ol-Molk Vaziri, the Lady of Iranian music.